alrighty, they've shut the doors, so I guess we can get started. So I'm Preece, and I've put this panel together so we can talk about some science, and I will allow these awesome people to introduce themselves.
My name is Tom King. I'm a writer for DC Comics. I write Preece, and coming out this Wednesday I write Omega Men. And I know very little about science, but I know lots about comics. So thank you for that science.
Hi, my name is Duncan Rouleau. I'm part of a collective called Man of Action. We created a show called Ben 10 and Big Hero 6. But I also did a book, a mini-series called The Metal Men, which is a great science group of characters. I, like Tom, I'm not a scientist by any stretch of imagination, but I grew up in a household of that. So I had too much ADD to really pursue any hard science with any kind of real rigid scholastic intent. But I love science. I try to weave science into absolutely everything I do.
And shows. As far as I'm concerned, I am a high school chemistry teacher. I went to graduate school for chemistry, and I've done some science consulting in comics, and I'm currently trying to make a chemistry comic that I can teach out of for my students. Because students get sidetracked and like, oh, how does this apply? So I'll try to show them how it applies. But so as a sort of introduction into this, there they are. I forgot to click the slide. As a foray into comic books, one of the greatest comic book heroes of all time sort of stems from putting bits and pieces of different science fact and gelling it into one person. So an ant can lift approximately 5,000 times its weight, and a grasshopper can jump about 20 times its length, and so we get Superman from that. All science can inspire us, and we can take bits and pieces of it and put it together and in a new way and come up with something interesting, like with Superman. He can leap tall buildings, or initially could just leap tall buildings, and was super strong. Now he can obviously do much more than that now, as we've gotten more science and more fantastical in our ideas. Duncan mentioned, World Superman. How could he have become Superman? Well, they say it's because of Krypton. It was very dense planet, and so when he moved to the Earth, it's a mixture of the density of Krypton and being able to absorb the sun absorb the energy from our sun that allows him to have his powers. Well, if Krypton were the size of Earth, there wouldn't be a metal that is dense enough for it to exist. It would have to be about the size of Jupiter, or a little bit bigger, I believe, and have about 15 times the gravity that we do now. So that's a very high atmospheric pressure, and it would crush us. Like we'd probably, if you applied that to Earth, we'd probably be walking around as basically ants. We'd all have to have like huge exoskeletons and having to deal with that. And Duncan's work on Metal Men. Here are all the fantastic characters that he wrote about. Could you talk more?
Sure, absolutely. I do want to get into that. I wanted to read this quick little thing first, if I may, if that's okay. This is principally, you guys all remember that invasion we had in the Southwest. Those not quite living biological creatures that invaded, and when they lived inside of you, they would turn your body into, they'd rupture all the skin and the cells inside your body, and blood would come out of every orifice. It was called Ebola, and we were all terrified about it. But I would love for you to hear this little story, and this is why I love science, and I think science and comics go together so well. So every virus has a host, a reservoir host, somewhere where it comes from, where it dwells, because they become dormant and they get activated for one reason or another. They either they transfer over into the human species. They could be operating inside of animal species for a long time. So it's very important to find that reservoir host if you're going to find any kind of antivirus or some way to combat it. And this comes from this great science writer named David Quammen. He talks about host reservoirs, SARS, AIDS, Ebola, all of these different kinds of things. And these field scientists who go out to the jungles of Cameroon, the Congo, I mean, any Indiana Jones place you could possibly imagine, the thick, dense jungle. And what they do is they search around for animals, dead animals, plants, not so much plants, but they search around for what possibly could be the host animal prior to it transferring over into human. And be able to study that to see exactly how it's grown and mutated so that it would come into our genetic pooling. And this is the guy who, they've had some new antivirus, some vaccinations that seem to be working for the Ebola, and we can owe it to this guy, and it's not Thor. He is walking around and he found a dead gorilla. He finds this dead gorilla. He knows he has to take it back and examine it, take it apart medically. So he wears his full hazmat suit, it's covered head to toe, and he's picking up the body in this dense jungle in a hazmat suit. So we're talking about high humidity, high jungle, humidity at a high altitude, and he's picking up a very large dead animal. And when he picks it up, lo and behold, there's a bee's nest inside of the animal, and the bees jump all over his body. They start climbing in every little part of his suit. And at this point, he's holding a gorilla, a dead gorilla, up as he's dragging around, and bees have gotten into his suit. And these bees could very well have been crawling and been infected by, he doesn't know yet if this is an Ebola dead gorilla or not. They could very well be, as they're stinging him, be infecting him with Ebola. And he muscles through that and drags this gorilla down, and it didn't die of Ebola. But he is the guy who did help find some of the materials and whatnot that had transferred over. And if this guy isn't an action hero in every comic book sense of the word, when you start thinking about the idea that all of us, every single one of us, are thankful and affected by this one person's work, it can really help focus this whole idea of science and comic books, because we glorify our heroes in comic books. We talk about these things. And I do think it's very important that when we talk about them, we also talk about how these things, because where I work at JPL, or by JPL in Los Angeles, most of my friends are scientists, mostly robotics, but some astrophysicists and whatnot. To a person, they are comic book fans. I am more a personality at the barbecues than the guy who just took pictures of Mars, on his remote camera. And I just find that bizarre because, to me, one is advancing the knowledge of mankind, and the other one is the rest of us entertaining the rest of us. But what these things can do, and what I hopefully will do, and now I'll segue back into the metal then, is I hope to inspire readers, even if it's not kids. I hope to inspire you to then take a look at the real stuff. If this is a way to help you get some information to see how just amazing science can be, then that's great. And so with the metal men, taking that into consideration, one of the very first things that I wanted to make sure that I did with these characters was each metal has its own properties, and each properties in an artistic way have been transformed over into a personality. Because properties, in a genetic sense, really do affect your personality in a very real sense. So that's the kind of the allegory that happens with the metal men. And one of the big things with these guys was back in the late 50s when they were invented, early 60s, sending books through anything that was children's material sent through the U.S. mail had to have at least 5% educational material in it. So DC's way of doing that was with the metal men, they would put in metal facts and fancies, which was about a 2-pager that was really just hard science done in comic book form, but it was like, you know, how many bones in a human hand, and they'd have a drawing of a hand, and it'd show you all the different bones. And I wanted to take that concept, because I loved it so much, and put it in this. So in the middle of a fight, they would be fighting something, some bizarre chemical monstrosity of some sort, and they would use science to solve the problem. And I did an awful lot of research myself, but a lot of my friends who are real scientists would gather around and help me with a lot of these things. So almost always it would, you know, talking about alkalines, or talking about heavy metals, or talking about dense materials, or things that, you know, have that are highly conductive, and all of these things were an essential part of not only the story, but also the way that they talked to each other. They could take on those personalities. So that was an attempt. Is there anything else? If I talked you all into a boring pools of tears.
Have you, you work at DC, have you dealt much with the middlemen? I know they've sort of taken the back seat in the DCU of late.
A little, yeah, they just came back in New 52.
Right, because they were in the Justice League, Justice League that Jeff Johns was writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're fascinating. There's like a famous story behind how they were invented. Like Bob Kanigher was a crazy.
I don't know this story.
You know how you know it. Oh,
Just talk to them.
so, I get a little obsessed with comics because Bob Kanigher was a crazy DC writer. He was an editor. He worked in house, and he was a womanizer, and always like he's kind of tough guy. Maybe some kind of gangstery, which is really weird when you're writing nerd comics. He wrote all the war comics, and he edited all the war comics. And famously, he was told on like a Saturday night that the artist or the writer couldn't come through with a backup story for a series, and he went to his daughter's soccer game or something, and had 5 minutes to write the story, and sat there and said, looked around his car and was like, metals are things that people care about, and he just listed off all the metals he knew in his head and named them all, and he did it it was the quickest thing he ever did. It was most famous for, and he wrote it up. He had his portable typewriter with him, wrote up a script, and that's a little more inventive. It was a 6-minute, and he knew nothing about science or what actual properties. He was like, gold is fancy, so the fancy guy will be gold, and mercury is mercurial. Is mercurial, yeah, mercurial, exactly. He knew the words, but there was no science behind. And then once he'd invented for each of them their qualities, not based on science. He'd repeat those qualities over and over again in every single issue. Mercury had to say that at room temperature he was liquid in every single issue. Yeah, but it was the thing he did the quickest and that lasted the longest.
I had no idea. I've not heard about that story.
Yeah,
For this run that Duncan did, I put a few panels on here that I really enjoyed. So 10 is fighting strontium here. That is the color of strontium when it's burned, and it is an alkaline metal. Here, radium is a radioactive element. and this person is talking about iodine to block the radium, and we do use iodine to help prevent from radiation exposure. That's why we have iodine in our salt. But it also helps regulate the thyroid, but it also helps prevent us from a little bit of radiation damage. And we have a lovely structure here that gets the chemist in me to squeal. This is a form of quartz called onyx. It can either be black or white, I think, or black or clear. Or no, not clear. Quartz is clear. So black or white. And platinum oxides are used to as a catalyst to hydrogenate organic compounds. So this is a little bit of a mixture of those two concepts there, which was awesome that he went into such research and detail through the comic, and it's all throughout the comic. It's great. Also, something else, with the expansion of the Marvel movies, and we're getting a new Fantastic Four movie. The version of Science for Its Own Sake, which is very much Reed Richards, and Science for terms of weaponizing an industry, which is very much Tony Stark. So Reed Richards has given us space travel and the negative zone, which I guess may be our real equivalent to something like some weird dark matter universe. And then Tony Stark has given us a lot of energy technology and weapons technology. How do you guys see like Science for Its Own Sake or science for industrial purposes in the comics?
The interesting thing that had occurred to me after I saw the Age of Ultron, and it's really very fascinating, the conversation that happens in between art and politics, and art and science being a political, one of the legs of a lot of debate as far as how things get funded, how we view and use technology, and how research itself is also viewed, and where things are valued, and how it's also reflected in our pop culture. Tony Stark right now is the focus. Everybody loves him, and I was kind of musing with the idea that post 9/11, Tony Stark probably would feel a little more heroic. He did appear as a Cold War hero. He was created specifically, to fight Russian aggression in a lot of ways. Reed Richards was much more research-based. Everything he was doing was pure research. It was going out, testing something, trying it. Now, it did have effects after that, and discoveries were made after that. But it really, he was much more representative of what I thought of more as the atomic, post-atomic age, but also kind of came and was born out of the, the Sputnik kind of, race to the moon kind of thinking. So there was some application, but science was really heralded at that time as, and the research of it, doors were wide open, possibilities everywhere. We do have that now in a lot of biology and genetics and medicine and an awful lot, but just inside of our art and our entertainment right now, Tony Stark is the one that is being concentrated on. And I don't see, with the cancellation of the Fantastic Four comic book, I got a little more concerned that research, or the, let's just say the honorary hero of research, isn't getting his due, his due inside of the big debate. So I just thought that was worthy of discussion, how art and science themselves can help each other. Not only do we get material from them, but we can also, as artists, can also focus in on the things that we want to, we actually want to celebrate and put it up as a pantheon of things to move towards.
Yeah, just from a storytelling point of view, I find it very fun. I like that dichotomy you put up there. Because in writing those characters, and so many people have trouble writing Fantastic Four, like it just keeps failing and failing and failing. It's almost like the Superman of the Marvel Universe, where it just, you know what I'm saying? Like there's like a classic image of your head of the perfect Fantastic Four story, and nobody can tell it again. There's the classic Superman image of this first story. Nobody seems, because they don't want to tell that same story again, but they can't modify. But everyone knows the classic Batman story. They tell that over and over again, and it still works. But Fantastic Four and Superman doesn't work. And Fantastic Four, it's because they're these essential explorers, right? They're the challengers of the unknown, but there's no purpose, like you said, to their exploration. And so just making them explorers and taking out sort of the moral grounds of their exploring, which was Mark Waid did, the Imaginauts kind of thing, makes it very hard for writers to be like, okay, let's just go off and explore, because it leaves you so little room for what the conflict is. The conflict has to eventually be Reed Richards' areas. Like that becomes the story over and over again. You see, Reed Richards goes too far and it becomes Frankenstein and makes a monster. Whereas with Tony Stark, when it's actually purposeful, like I'm trying to accomplish a goal, then you put someone in the way of his goal, and that creates your central conflict for your story. So just from a storytelling point of view, it's a lot easier to tell Iron Man stories than Fantastic Four stories that are less repetitive. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Having done research for its own sake and being funded by a company who wanted results quickly and on time, I know this struggle personally because as a scientist you want to do research, explore every aspect of that and see where it goes and make sure that you get reproducible results and that they make sense and that you can something interesting will pop up that you can sort of divert and go into a new direction and possibly discover something new. Whereas if you are a company, you have one narrow purpose, you have to keep working towards that purpose all the time, and they don't really like it when you go in a different direction. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? We're not paying you to do that. Well, something beautiful like funding NASA, they have a goal, but in the end they're doing this for the fun and love of science and exploration. And so much of our technology has come from NASA. And there's so many benefits to funding just pure science and understanding the fundamentals of everything, because that can lead to what you want in the end. It might take a little longer, but you'll probably get more out of it in the end. So I clearly side on the side of Reed Richards here.
Right, and I mean, one is more about research and one is more about application, ultimately. Reed Richards is a challenger of the unknown. He does go out into places that you have no idea. He has no idea. He's just looking and bringing back boons, both ill and good, in his adventures. I mean, I suppose that's always that's the dramatic core of that kind of character when they go out there. But ultimately, all of the knowledge that he brings back is knowledge, and that can be used in a million different ways by people like Tony Stark. But without a Reed Richards, you don't have those other characters. They can't be working on theories if they aren't actually discovering the truths behind them, if they are in fact workable theories.
Right. Well, one of the effects of Tony Stark leads down the line, at least from the movie perspective anyway, not the original comic, is that we get the Vision. Of course, Ultron was made by Ant-Man in the comics, but in the, if you've watched Avengers, it's made by Tony Stark. But speaking of the Vision, he can change his density, which is very interesting. And he has solar beams, and of course he runs by artificial intelligence. And continuing on the sole purpose of AI, of artificial intelligence, Hank Pym makes Ultron, or in the movie case, Tony Stark. And then, but that wasn't his intention. And then Ultron makes the vision. So, not all that we intend to make, our intentions, whether it be good or bad, sometimes go awry. Even when you're using science, mad science. Do you guys have anything to say about vision?
I always thought his density changing was the single most unique and cool part. How dense has he ever gotten? Has been recorded? Because if he, he could almost collapse in on himself and take everything with him if he not dense enough. Has he ever done that?
I think like diamond dense is like the...
Yeah, I think he just goes to diamond form. I don't think he's gone past that I've read, but you can, if anybody knows, otherwise you can certainly correct us.
Yeah.
I know the story how he got created too.
Yeah.
Roy Thomas was writing Avengers, and he was tired because he'd keep requesting, I wanted something to happen to one of my superheroes where they grow or shrink or get hurt, and then all the other solo books would say no. He's like, I'm going to create my own character so I can torture him. And he went to Stan Lee and said, yeah, make it a robot. And that was the origin of the vision. It was like a 1-second conversation, The vision's very unique because a lot of times these AIs that you create are always, the vision has emotions, which is a weird for robot comics. Most comics there are sort of data or spot equivalents.
Right.
And they try to get that sort of audience. But the vision has like an emotional core to it, which allows him to love Scarlet Witch, which creates these very bizarre stories. Yeah, I mean, I love the Vision. Fucking great character. He has the worst continuity of any character in Marvel.
Oh, he is an amalgam of everything, isn't he? He's
Yeah.
got the Human Torch body, the original Human Torch
Yeah,
body.
right.
Wonder Man's...
Wonder Man's brain
imprint.
imprint.
He's just like he's the salad bar.
Yeah, no, it's wrong. Hank Pym's grandfather, and now he has another continuity, and he's got another mind. And I think he has no. What a mixed up little green man.
Yeah. One thing, the density. How could he change this density? Because we certainly can't really do that.
For yourself.
You do over a period of time.
Over a period of time. How he can do that so fast? What the thing in my mind that just goes crazy when he does it is how is he holding himself together? Like we're all a collective of atoms that merge, and for him to phase through a wall. You've got to be broken down to the atomic level and to be able to go through that. And certainly not all metals are going to be able to go through a metal wall. Hydrogen can. It's very hard to contain hydrogen molecules because they're very small. But once you get larger atoms like metals and it's trying to go through a metal wall, that's not. There's something strange going here. Looking at it scientifically.
I guess I always kind of thought of him as a contained version of the Star Trek's, the transporter, in the sense that he was, even in his quote-unquote human form, his stasis form here, where he can operate with other people. I guess I always kind of thought of that as maybe not really his ultimate true form. His true form is probably his most dense. And that he breaks apart, everything else is some version of him, becoming far more activated on a molecular level where everything's moving around, without actually transporting it other places.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say is I think this speaks to like the core of what I think of as comic book science, which is like actual science surprises you with how it works. Comic book science is based on a common sense, which is not true. It seems like when you press on something, you're like, oh man, why can't I put my hand through that? I was like, oh, if only I could tell each molecule to miss the other molecule while they go through. If I could do that, I could put my hand through it. No, it takes no sense in terms of how fundamental forces of the universe work, but in your common sense brain that works. So we can put it in comic books because common sense science works, but real science we don't worry about.
Right. Yeah. If you're talking about basically phasing through the table, if you could within an atom, it has a very small core, and then most of the atom is empty space with a big electron cloud. So if you could sort of shrink the electron cloud or nullify the electron repulsion, yeah, you could go through anything. But how would one do that? I don't know. But those are the interesting things. So thinking on this subatomic level, being able to do that is fascinating to me. And we were talking about Wonder Man, and he is another interesting character, since he had the brainwaves, or Vision had the brainwaves of Wonder Man. Wonder Man is powered by ions, which I find interesting. So he should be the spokesperson for Gatorade. He is just, he's able to absorb electrolytes or ions all around, and then I guess repurpose that energy somehow. Now, the glow of the sort of red and pink would indicate that it's some mixture of magnesium and potassium, I believe. So mainly those ions.
That would be the worst tasting drink.
But yeah, so a plug for Wonder Man there, and I think for comic book artists and writers, the challenge of showing how the science is powerful, or shown like the almost the Kirby crackle that's going on here, to show the power is just awesome. How do you guys write that when you're breaking down a script and going panel by panel? How do you explain to the artist what you want it to look like, or do you let them just sort of create that vision on their own?
Oh, well, I mean, now we're getting into what's graphically entertaining, and also what could possibly be factually, at least within the ballpark. I know inside of The Metal Men, where she was specifically, acting as a catalyst, she was going through and transforming that. I chose to use an awful lot of the more scientific labels, where you would actually just see the written out version of it and add it into the design, then trying to give some kind of molecular drawing of what it would look like for the chemical reaction. After having said that, there are other times that some of those are really quite graphically pleasing. So, honestly, that's I don't know. I've never really written for other people on that front. That might be a better question for you to answer as far as writing for other people, if you take that into consideration.
I can give you a concrete example where I screwed it up. The Grayson had a sneak peek, like an 8-page preview that just came out recently, and in the preview, I had him jump out of a commercial airline, just open the door and jumps out. That makes common sense. I didn't realize that he was stupid things here. And then at the end, I had a flashback to the plane. It looked like after someone jumped out of the airplane. And I had written it, I don't know, maybe the plastic things dropped down. And the artist had focused on all the fantastic, Cal Jennings, a beautiful artist, had focused on all the emotional beats, but hadn't sort of drawn any sort of panic or any sort of pressure cabin or any sort of anything. So everyone's just kind of like, I guess, halfway through this flight, one of the doors opened. And so the actual science of somebody jumping out of a plane didn't actually affect the panels. But because it's comics, and I feel that both the readers and the writers almost have a hidden agreement that this is not going to make 100% sense. Like, the point of this is to get dramatic moments, not to get science. I see in my comics. What you do with inspiring people is much more noble than what I do with trying to just push science down so I can point to dramatic moments. But you just have to do enough so they can suspend belief. And as long as I can not break because I mean, drama is about making rules and sticking to the rules. As long as and we can stick to the small rules, then I think they're fine with it. So like, most people didn't complain about the fact that it's obviously stupid. But then I see people online being like, oh, this only works with fun comics, and I get so embarrassed. I'm like, he's totally right. But it's a tough line to walk.
I got another one for you. I think you make a point. It's about the story.
Yeah.
The science is almost something that uses an engine that can move the story forward, and whether it's Ulysses or Santa Claus.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember, but there was an email floating around several years ago about the science around Santa Claus. Like how many households would he have to visit in the 1 billion Christian households across the world? And it would basically mean he's not flying 26,000 miles. He's flying more like, a couple million, once you add it all up together. And to get that all done in 24 hours would mean he's flying approximately 57,000 times the speed of sound. And so even if he does exist, he's probably already burned through the atmosphere about 5 times and he's dead.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Like,
the story is
comic is meant to like spur a little spurt of joy in you somehow. And tying that to science makes it more believable and makes it more relatable. Because if you read a story and you're not at all connected to it, you think, oh, this is just a bunch of stuff floating in a vat of nothingness, then it sucks. But so you have to somehow connect it to your real life, connect it to a real person, and you can use science as one of the sort of strings to do that. Like, oh, this could really happen. But that's what I suppose.
Santa Claus is clearly a quantum phenomenon.
Oh, I was going to say.
He can be in multiple places at once.
Yeah, when we start not talking about it in any three-dimensional physical space, but we start getting into multi-dimensions, then all of a sudden he makes complete sense. And his story still remains intact.
You just have to dig deep enough.
With so many cookies.
I want my no prize.
That's right.
Sorry. So do people like Neil deGrasse Tyson get on your nerves that they like nitpick at every little thing that doesn't make sense in a movie, or is that necessary for scripts and for comics for people like that to nitpick, to bring in the logic? And because what you guys do, you tell a story, but you can also, like you said, you can educate readers as well. So do you find it necessary to bring the drama more so, or when you have the opportunity to educate, do you want to bring that to your audience as well? Or you don't care?
Oh, no. Personally, I don't see it as an antagonistic force at all. Ultimately, yes, of course, story. This is about entertainment. At the very base, it's gotta be. If it isn't entertaining, then you're not doing your job, no doubt. But much like you would do research, if you were writing about a certain location or a certain area or history or anything, you're going to do some research and you're going to try and find out as much as you can. So that's an opportunity in some cases to educate yourself, and and science is no different that way. You can use it in a lot of ways. It can get it can get in your way of telling the story you want to tell, but it can open up doors for you to tell stories in different ways. Which is, as far as story structure and not hitting the old cliches and not just kind of ringing the same bells again and again, the fact of knowing some stuff and how it might not operate the way I thought it was forces me into a corner to try and come up with a new way out. And that can be just as dramatic as long as you can do it in a way that's entertaining, in a way that makes sense to you. Aren't isolating yourself and trying to talk down to readers, trying to do anything like that, because ultimately this is about fun and collaboration. It is about you collaborating with the reader. You're coming up with something, and if that's not honored first and foremost, then you're failing as a storyteller. Now, having as many tools as you possibly can and trying to use them as best you can, and allowing, like you said, those rules that you do know exist to inform your story and maybe find a really cool new way to express it. To me, that's the fun of writing for me. So when someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson comes along, he to me, is a great communicator because ultimately he does also come in as a collaborator. He talks about these things as a very living, passionate kind of, part of the human experience, not some kind of clinical, detached, over there kind of thinking. And, just in general, this is a great forum. Comics is a great forum and can be a great forum for just building on that kind of sentiment. That's all. It doesn't need to be more than that. It just needs to be a place that, when you come into it, you want to go to wild worlds and stuff like that. But if you can, and escape a little bit. But if you can also, much like you try to honor, other aspects of what it means to be human, so science is part of it too. So, that's my take on that.
I totally agree with everything. I'd add that the nitpicking, the older I get, the more I feel that the nitpicking of comics is what I most enjoy about them. And the most fun I have, like the actual reading of a comic book, you pay $4, it takes 15 minutes, and when you could spend nothing and watch Infinite on Netflix. So it has to be, the enjoyment of that issue has to be for more than 15 minutes. And what's the most fun, the older I get, is calling my friends and being like, oh, they violated that rule, the other guy was in the continuity, oh no, they didn't, I didn't explain that, oh no. And then and then we talk about it online, and we F that guy, and oh, that was great. And then you realize, you're like, oh, you violated the rule, and you're like, no, there's another rule that came in, you're like, oh, of course. And it's the nitpicking that becomes the fun of it. Like last night, a buddy of mine sat on the couch and watched the Flash TV show, and I paused and said, that's stupid, and he paused and said, no, that's wonderful. And it was that social interaction that made it cool, and made it fun. So yeah, nitpick away, that's part of it. It has to be.
Yeah, I love the nitpicking. I have a whole website dedicated to nitpicking, atomicuniverse.org, which I nitpick on all sorts of comics. Nitpicking just means that you're paying close attention and you're thinking about the material. And if all comics were scientifically accurate, we wouldn't have superheroes. And then what would be the fun? I will point out the flaws in things, but the flaws are what make it the most fun.
That's also where you can bring up honest discussion in a classroom, some kind of setting. Well, this is, not quite how it would go. This is kind of more how it would go. And now you're engaged with your students or anybody, for that matter. If you wanted to talk about those specific things, if that's the subject matter.
Right. So, if I'm talking about nuclear chemistry, I could pull out Firestorm here, and he transmutates matter, and then we can have a discussion on, well, how would this actually look within the atom? What would be the ramifications of this? Or magnetism with Magneto and all these wonderful things. Which is what I hope to be doing at some point with comic.
Is Firestorm the most powerful character in all of comics?
I would say he's right up there with the Flash, I think. If he doesn't have to, Firestorm has to shoot somebody with the beam for it to work. If he didn't have to do that, I would say absolutely yes. There's another character I would say I would put up right up there, and that would be Dr. Solar, who is basically Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen. He is a derivative character of Dr. Solar. And he is pure, at his purest, he is E equals MC squared. He can transmutate, or not transmutate, that's the wrong word. He can convert mass into energy and energy into mass. He can control all that. So I would say that he's probably the most powerful, but I would put Firestorm and Flash up there also. Because, the Flash he goes to the Speed Force, whatever the Speed Force is, I have no idea, because that cannot be explained. But
that's just Deus Ex Machina, I think it's called that.
Yeah.
DEF.
It's outside learned physics.
Yeah. It's like, we want him to do all these things, we don't know how to explain it, so it's, this other thing entirely that we're going to make up this word, which is fine. And we can have fun with poking at it. Anybody else have questions? We've got 7 minutes.
You're trying to get into the market, get an education for it. Is there a market for that? When you started adding alkalized the Metal Man. What was the response? Were people excited?
I had a wide response because I mean it's also a very goofy book too. Hopefully, the characters that they were fighting were the death metal men. I am hoping that that is bringing in that kind of audience just as much. Honestly, for all of the science, they're some of the best. They specifically are some of the best characters to actually talk about science. It's natural dialogue for them. It isn't forced. It isn't something that comes laid on it. It's so integrated thematically into their existence that if you didn't do it, you were almost kind of doing those characters a disservice. So I had a wide response. Boy, when I got some of my chemistry wrong, I got told. In no uncertain terms. You know that can't happen. So I love those responses just as much as kind of I had Atlantis and a whole bunch of other kind of crazy stuff happening in there where people, from a lot of different quadrants responded to it. So I think it was pretty well received. I think some people thought it was confusing, the story. Maybe even myself a little bit. But that's almost its own kind of thing. But educationally, you asked me to come up on the panel, so I guess I did okay.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. As far as educationally, there's always been a push to at least a little bit to bring in comics into the classroom, and lately there was a successful series called How Toons, which was meant to be sort of an explorer book and teach and show kids how to make certain things. It was more geared towards engineering, like how to make goggles out of a soda pop bottle, or how to make a marshmallow blowgun out of PVC pipe and all this other stuff. And there was all these little really cool projects that they did within that book. And it really sort of opened my mind that you can put science and these things into a narrative, because that's not what the book was about. The book had a normal story narrative, and then whenever they got to a cool part that the kids needed to invent something or build something, they put that in. And I think that's great. That's wonderful. So you can have your story and have the science. So hopefully, that sort of format can continue to be done to foster other things, more hardcore science.
And just mainstream superhero comics, I think if you look at what Grant Morrison did, maybe like his Superman work, he took like advanced physics and applied it, and people fell for it like nothing else. So I think there's definitely some room for Morrison.
We have a couple minutes left. Is there any other questions? Yes, now I get to quiz you about chemistry. I'll just run through the slides here. There's a little bit on the Ant-Man where
All
you can...
Marvel slides, man. What's going on?
Hey, we did a bunch of DC stuff earlier. The Flash, which we talked a little bit about. Firestorm, of course. Metamorpho is also one of my favorite characters because he is the element man. He can transform himself into any element. And this is one of my favorite panels in all of comics. Mike Allred drew Metamorpho having to transform into every element across the periodic table with Element Woman. And here's some current science and comics. Scott Snyder and Batman, almost every issue inserts a little bit of something. Here's a panel from How Toons. They're talking about energy. And of course, Magneto using ferrofluids. fluids. So those are magnetic liquids. He had little capsules and threw them on the ground, and then killed these people by seeping that into the brain. So you guys have anything else? No. Thank you all so much for coming. Great questions, and thank you guys for coming up here and talking science with me.
having us. Awesome.
Yeah. I got you guys a gift.
You guys a gift? It's anthrax. This is the break you guys.
Someone who does awesome science comics is Jim Ottaviani, and Primates. He also has several other books, but I got you guys a copy.
Rock, man. I wanted to buy this, right? But it's not. I mean, I read myself over 10 minutes.